Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Invitation. The rain fell in a relentless drizzle over London, casting a grey veil across the cobblestone streets and lending an air of melancholy to the evening. Inside his impeccably ordered apartment at Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot sat in a high-backed armchair, a cup of tisane steaming gently on the table beside him. His small, meticulous hands were folded neatly in his lap, and his moustache, waxed to perfection, gleamed under the soft glow of a Tiffany lamp. Before him lay a letter, its envelope of fine cream vellum embossed with a silver crest, a stylized mirror framed by ivy. The invitation within had piqued his curiosity, a rare occurrence for a man who prided himself on seeing through the artifice of human affairs. The letter was from Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, a socialite of considerable renown, whose wealth and charm had made her a fixture in England's high society. She invited Poirot to a weekend gathering at her country estate, Mirrorwood Manor, in the rolling hills of Sussex. The occasion was described as a celebration of reflections, an enigmatic phrase that seemed to promise more than mere festivity. Lady Eleanor hinted at a matter requiring Poirot's unique talents, though she refrained from specifics, writing only, "There are shadows in the glass, Monsieur Poirot, that only a mind such as yours may illuminate." Poirot's green eyes narrowed as he reread the letter. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, stroking his moustache. "This is no ordinary summons. There is a puzzle here, n'est-ce pas? And where there is a puzzle, there is always a truth waiting to be uncovered." His long-time friend, Captain Arthur Hastings, sat opposite him, nursing a glass of whisky. Hastings, with his earnest face and perpetually bemused expression, leaned forward. "Sounds like a jolly weekend in the country, old chap. Why the long face? Surely it's just a party." Poirot's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Hastings, my dear friend, you see a party where I see a stage. Lady Eleanor does not write to Hercule Poirot for mere merriment. No, there is something afoot, something perhaps sinister." Hastings chuckled. "You're always sniffing out mysteries, Poirot. Maybe she just wants your company. You're quite the celebrity, you know." "Non, non," Poirot replied, waving a dismissive hand. "Celebrity is fleeting, but the little grey cells, they are eternal. This invitation, it is a call to exercise them. And I, Hercule Poirot, shall answer." The next morning, under a sky that had reluctantly cleared, Poirot and Hastings boarded a train bound for Sussex. The countryside unfolded in patches of green and gold, but Poirot's attention remained fixed on the letter, which he had tucked into his waistcoat pocket. Hastings, meanwhile, prattled on about the virtues of country air, and the prospect of meeting Lady Eleanor's illustrious guests. "Bound to be a lively bunch," he said. "Herdo, parties are legendary, you know. Actresses, politicians, maybe even a foreign dignitary or two." Poirot nodded absently. "And yet, Hastings, it is not the guests who intrigue me, but the hostess. Why does she speak of shadows? Why a celebration of reflections? There is a meaning here, hidden like a pearl in an oyster." The train deposited them at a quaint station, where a sleek Rolls-Royce awaited, its driver a taciturn man with a scar across his left cheek. "Mirrorwood Manor, gentlemen," he said gruffly, opening the door. The drive wound through ancient oaks and past a shimmering lake, its surface like a polished mirror. Poirot's eyes lingered on the water, his mind already turning over the symbolism of reflections. As the manor came into view, Hastings let out a low whistle. Mirrorwood Manor was a sprawling Jacobean pile, its stone facade adorned with ivy and flanked by twin towers. The windows gleamed like eyes. and at the centre of the entrance hall, visible through the open doors, hung an enormous mirror, its gilt frame catching the late afternoon light. Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A mirror," he murmured. "The first of many, I suspect." Lady Eleanor greeted them in the grand foyer, her presence as commanding as her reputation suggested. She was a woman in her late 40s, with auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. Her gown, a deep emerald silk, rustled as she extended a hand to Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot, what an honour," she said, her voice warm but with an undercurrent of urgency. "And Captain Hastings, welcome. I trust your journey was pleasant." "Most pleasant, madame," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "But I confess, it is your letter that occupies my thoughts. You speak of shadows. May I know more?" Lady Eleanor's smile faltered, and she glanced toward the mirror behind her. "All in good time, Monsieur Poirot. Tonight we dine and celebrate. Tomorrow we shall speak of other matters." The other guests were already assembling in the drawing-room, a cavernous space lined with portraits and more mirrors, each reflecting the flickering light of a chandelier. Poirot noted the eclectic mix. Sir Reginald Vance, a brusque industrialist with a penchant for brandy. Miss Clara Duval, a French actress whose beauty was matched only by her sharp tongue. Dr. Leonard Grayson, a psychologist with a nervous tic. And Lord Percival Ashbourne, Lady Eleanor's younger brother, whose dissipated air suggested a life of excess. There was also a quiet, mousy woman, introduced as Miss Emily Thorne, Lady Eleanor's secretary, and a dashing young man named Julian Carver, a painter of some repute. Rounding out the party was Mrs. Beatrice Langley, a widowed heiress with a penchant for pearls and a laugh that grated on Poirot's nerves. Dinner was a lavish affair, with silver gleaming and crystal sparkling under candlelight. Yet Poirot sensed an undercurrent of tension. Sir Reginald and Lord Percival exchanged barbed remarks about business dealings, while Miss Duval flirted outrageously with Julian, who seemed more interested in his wine. Dr. Grayson watched everyone with a clinical intensity, and Miss Thorne barely spoke, her eyes darting to Lady Eleanor as if seeking approval. Hastings, oblivious to the subtleties, enthused about the roast pheasant. As the meal drew to a close, Lady Eleanor rose, tapping her glass. "My friends," she said, "tonight we celebrate reflections, not just in glass, but in ourselves. Who are we, truly, when the masks we wear are stripped away?" Her gaze lingered on each guest, and Poirot felt a prickle of unease. The words were theatrical, but her tone carried a weight that suggested more than rhetoric. Later, as the guests retired to the drawing-room, Poirot lingered in the foyer, studying the great mirror. Its surface was flawless, yet something about it unsettled him. He leaned closer, his reflection staring back, and for a moment he thought he saw a shadow move behind him, a shadow that was not his own. "Hastings," he called softly, but his friend was already deep in conversation with Miss Duval. Poirot straightened, his mind racing. The little grey cells were stirring, sensing the first threads of a mystery that would soon unravel into something far darker than a mere celebration. The night was young, and Mirrorwood Manor held its secrets close, but Hercule Poirot was not a man to be deterred by shadows. Chapter 2. Arrival at Mirrorwood Manor. The Rolls-Royce crunched to a halt on the gravel drive of Mirrorwood Manor, its tyres sinking slightly into the damp earth as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the estate. Hercule Poirot stepped out, his polished shoes gleaming despite the journey, and surveyed the imposing facade with a discerning eye. The manor's stonework, weathered yet grand, seemed to whisper of secrets older than its current inhabitants. Captain Hastings followed, his enthusiasm undimmed by the faint chill in the air. "Quite a place, Poirot?" he said, craning his neck to take in the twin towers and the ivy-clad walls. "Like something out of a Gothic novel." Poirot adjusted his hat, his gaze lingering on the great mirror visible through the open front doors. "Oui, Hastings, but it is not the architecture that interests me. It is the people within, and what they conceal behind their own reflections." His voice was soft, almost drowned by the rustle of leaves in the breeze, but it carried the weight of anticipation. The butler, a gaunt man named Mr. Harrow, with eyes like polished obsidian, greeted them with a stiff bow. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, Lady Eleanor awaits you in the drawing-room." His tone was formal, but Poirot noted a flicker of unease in his posture, as if the man were guarding more than the door. They were led through the foyer, where the massive gilt-framed mirror dominated the space, its surface catching the fading light and throwing it back in fractured glints. Poirot's reflection stared at him, and he felt again that prickle of intuition, a sense that this mirror, or perhaps all mirrors in this place, held more than mere images. The drawing-room was a study in opulence, its walls lined with dark oak panelling and more mirrors, each framed in ornate silver or gold. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows that seemed to merge with the reflections, creating an illusion of movement where none should be. Lady Eleanor stood near the fireplace, her emerald gown a vivid contrast to the room's muted tones. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her smile warm, but her eyes searching, "you honour us with your presence." "The honour is mine, madame," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "Your invitation was most intriguing. I am eager to understand its purpose." Lady Eleanor's smile tightened, and she gestured to the other guests who were scattered about the room like pieces on a chessboard. "All in good time. First, allow me to introduce my companions for this weekend." Poirot's sharp eyes catalogued each figure as they were presented. Sir Reginald Vance, the industrialist, stood by a window, his broad shoulders hunched as he sipped a brandy. His face, ruddy from years of excess, bore the marks of a man accustomed to power but not scrutiny. Miss Clara Duval, the French actress, lounged on a velvet settee, her crimson dress clinging to her form as she toyed with a cigarette holder. Her laughter was sharp, almost calculated, as she caught Poirot's gaze. Dr. Leonard Grayson, the psychologist, sat in a corner, his fingers twitching as he observed the room with clinical detachment. Lord Percival Ashbourne, Lady Eleanor's brother, leaned against a bookcase, his handsome features marred by a dissipated air and bloodshot eyes. Miss Emily Thorne, the secretary, hovered near Lady Eleanor, her plain grey dress and downcast eyes making her nearly invisible. Finally, Julian Carver, the painter, stood before a portrait, his dark curls falling over his brow as he studied the canvas with an intensity that seemed out of place in the convivial setting. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, the widowed heiress, completed the group, her pearls gleaming as she chattered about her recent travels. "A fascinating assembly," Poirot murmured to Hastings as they took their seats. "Each one, I suspect, has a story that does not meet the eye." Hastings grinned. "You're already spinning webs, Poirot. They seem a pleasant enough lot. Bit theatrical, perhaps, but that's high society for you." "Theatrical, oui," Poirot said, his voice low, "but the theatre, Hastings, is where masks are worn, and I intend to see what lies beneath." The conversation at tea was light, filled with pleasantries about the weather and the beauty of Mirrorwood Manor. But Poirot sensed undercurrents. Sir Reginald spoke brusquely of a recent business deal, his tone suggesting a grudge against Lord Percival, who responded with a lazy smirk. Miss Duval's flirtations with Julian were met with polite but distracted replies, while Dr. Grayson's questions about the guests' pasts were deftly deflected. Miss Thorne remained silent, her hands folded tightly in her lap, and Mrs. Langley's laughter rang out too often, as if to drown out some unspoken anxiety. Lady Eleanor, presiding over the tea-table, steered the conversation with practised ease, but Poirot noted her frequent glances toward the door, as if expecting someone, or something. "Tell me, Monsieur Poirot," she said at last, "do you believe in the power of mirrors? They show us ourselves, but also other things, perhaps." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A mirror, madame, reflects only what is placed before it, but it is the mind that interprets the reflection, and the mind, it can be deceived." Her eyes flickered, and for a moment Poirot saw something raw in her expression, fear, perhaps, or desperation. But before he could press further, Mr. Harrow entered, announcing that the guests' rooms were ready. As they rose to follow him, Poirot lingered, his gaze drawn to a small mirror on the mantelpiece. Its surface was slightly warped, distorting his reflection into something almost unrecognizable. He frowned, his little grey cells buzzing with questions. The guests dispersed to their rooms to prepare for dinner, and Poirot and Hastings were shown to their quarters on the second floor. Poirot's room was elegant, with a four-poster bed and yet another mirror, a tall oval one in a silver frame. He stood before it, studying his reflection, and murmured, "What do you hide, Mirrorwood Manor? What truths do your mirrors conceal?" Hastings, poking his head through the connecting door, chuckled. "You're talking to mirrors now, Poirot. That's a new one." "Not talking, Hastings, listening," Poirot replied, "and already I hear the whispers of a mystery." As evening fell, the manor seemed to come alive with the creak of floorboards and the distant hum of conversation. Poirot dressed meticulously, his black tie immaculate, and joined Hastings in the corridor. They descended the grand staircase, the mirrors lining the walls reflecting their progress in a dizzying array of images. At the foot of the stairs, Poirot paused, his eyes narrowing as he caught a fleeting movement in the great mirror. A shadow, perhaps, or a trick of the light. "Dinner awaits, mon ami," he said to Hastings, but his tone was grave. "And with it, I suspect, the first pieces of our puzzle." The dining room was a spectacle of candlelight and crystal, but as Poirot took his seat, he felt the weight of unseen eyes. The mirrors, the guests, the manor itself, all seemed to watch, waiting for the moment when the first crack in the facade would appear. And Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, knew that moment was not far off. Chapter 3. The Shattered Glass and the Silent Scream. The dining room of Mirrorwood Manor glowed with the warmth of candlelight. The long mahogany table, laden with silver and crystal, that caught the flickering flames. Hercule Poirot sat at Lady Eleanor Ashbourne's right, his keen eyes observing the guests as they settled into their places. The air was thick with the scent of roasted pheasant and fine wine, but beneath the veneer of civility, Poirot sensed a tension that coiled like a spring. Captain Hastings, seated across from him, chatted amiably with Mrs. Beatrice Langley, oblivious to the undercurrents that Poirot's little grey cells were already dissecting. Lady Eleanor, resplendent in her emerald gown, raised a glass to toast her guests. "To reflections," she said, her voice clear but tinged with something Poirot could not yet name. Apprehension, perhaps. May we see ourselves clearly this weekend, and may truth shine through the glass. The guests murmured their assent, but Poirot noted the fleeting glances exchanged. Sir Reginald Vance's scowl, Miss Clara Duval's arched eyebrow, Dr. Leonard Grayson's twitch of a smile. The mirrors lining the walls seemed to amplify every gesture, reflecting the room in a dizzying kaleidoscope of images. Dinner progressed with the usual pleasantries, but Poirot's attention was drawn to the dynamics at play. Lord Percival Ashbourne, Lady Eleanor's brother, drank heavily, his laughter too loud, and his remarks edged with bitterness. Miss Emily Thorne, the secretary, picked at her food, her eyes darting to Lady Eleanor as if seeking reassurance. Julian Carver, the painter, spoke little, his gaze fixed on the chandelier as if lost in thought. Mrs. Langley's chatter filled the silences, but her laughter sounded forced, and Dr. Grayson's probing questions about the guests' pasts were met with deflections or outright hostility. As the dessert course was served, a delicate lemon soufflé, Poirot leaned toward Lady Eleanor. "Madame, your toast was most intriguing. You speak of truth and reflections. Is there a particular truth you seek this weekend?" Her fork paused mid-air, and her eyes met his, sharp and searching. "You are perceptive, Monsieur Poirot. There are matters that trouble me. But tonight is for celebration. Tomorrow we shall speak plainly." Before Poirot could press further, a piercing crash shattered the room's fragile harmony. Every head turned toward the source, the great mirror in the foyer, visible through the open dining-room doors. Shards of glass glittered on the floor, catching the candlelight like scattered stars. A collective gasp rose from the table, followed by a stunned silence. Then, from somewhere deep within the manor came a scream, a sound so raw and chilling that it seemed to echo in the very walls. "Good heavens!" Hastings exclaimed, leaping to his feet. "What was that?" Poirot was already moving, his small frame surprisingly agile as he crossed to the foyer. The guests followed, their voices a jumble of alarm and curiosity. The mirror, once a majestic centerpiece, lay in ruins, its gilt frame empty save for a few jagged fragments clinging to the edges. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers hovering over the shards. "Curieux," he murmured. "This was no accident. The glass, it is shattered from a single point, as if struck with force." Lady Eleanor appeared at his side, her face pale. "The mirror, it was an heirloom. Who would do such a thing?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "That, madame, is precisely what I intend to discover. But first, the scream. Where did it come from?" Mr. Harrow, the butler, emerged from the shadows, his usually impassive face taut with unease. "It came from upstairs, sir. The east wing, I believe. Lead the way, Monsieur Harrow," Poirot commanded, his tone brooking no delay. The guests trailed behind, a mix of fear and fascination in their expressions. Hastings, ever loyal, stayed close to Poirot, his hand hovering near his pocket as if expecting danger. The east wing was a maze of corridors lined with yet more mirrors, their surfaces reflecting the group's hurried progress. The air grew colder as they ascended a narrow staircase, and Poirot's senses were on high alert. The scream had been no ordinary cry. It carried the weight of terror, or perhaps pain. At the end of a dimly lit hallway, they found the source, a small sitting room, its door ajar. Inside, Miss Emily Thorne lay crumpled on the floor, her grey dress stained with a dark spreading pool of blood. A silver letter opener protruded from her chest, and her wide, unseeing eyes stared at a small oval mirror on the wall above her. The mirror was intact, but its surface seemed to shimmer, as if mocking the stillness of the scene. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, his heart sinking. "The first act of our tragedy has begun." Dr. Grayson pushed forward, kneeling beside the body. "She's dead," he said, his voice clinical but unsteady. "The wound is fresh, minutes ago at most." Lady Eleanor clutched Poirot's arm, her composure fraying. "Who could have done this? She was harmless." Poirot's gaze swept the room, taking in every detail. The overturned chair, the scattered papers on a desk, the faint smudge of blood on the edge of the mirror. "Harmless, perhaps, but not insignificant," he said softly. Mademoiselle Thorne knew something, or saw something, that made her a target. The guests crowded the doorway, their faces a gallery of shock and suspicion. Sir Reginald's fists were clenched, Miss Duval's hand trembled as she lit a cigarette, and Julian Carver's eyes were fixed on the mirror, as if seeing something the others could not. Lord Percival swayed, his face ashen, while Mrs. Langley's pearls clicked as she clutched them tightly. "Hastings," Poirot said, "fetch the local constable. This is now a matter for the law, though I suspect the law will need the assistance of Hercule Poirot." He turned to the group, his voice calm but commanding. "No one is to leave this manor. The answers to this crime are here, among us, and I shall find them." As Hastings hurried off, Poirot knelt beside the body, his eyes lingering on the letter opener. Its handle bore the same ivy and mirror crest as Lady Eleanor's stationery. "A clue, perhaps," he murmured, "or a taunt." He rose, addressing Lady Eleanor. "Madam, you spoke of shadows in the glass. Did Mademoiselle Thorne know of these shadows?" Lady Eleanor hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak, then closing. "She was my confidant," she said at last. "She knew certain things, but I cannot believe she was involved in anything dangerous." Poirot's moustache twitched. "In a house of mirrors, madame, everything is dangerous. For what is a mirror but a lie that tells the truth?" The guests were ushered back to the drawing-room, their whispers filling the air like static. Poirot remained in the sitting-room, his mind racing. The shattered mirror in the foyer, the scream, the murder, they were connected, pieces of a puzzle that only his little grey cells could assemble. He glanced at the small mirror above Miss Thorne's body, its surface now still, and felt a chill. For a moment, he thought he saw a shadow move within it. A shadow that was not his own. The night had grown darker, and Mirrorwood Manor seemed to close in around them. Poirot knew that the truth lay hidden in the reflections, waiting to be uncovered. And he, Hercule Poirot, would not rest until it was. Chapter 4. Reflections of the Past. The air in Mirrorwood Manor had grown heavy, as if the very walls absorbed the shock of Miss Emily Thorne's murder. Hercule Poirot stood in the small sitting-room where her body still lay, the silver letter opener glinting cruelly in the lamplight. The local constable, a portly man named Inspector Caldwell, had arrived, his face flushed from the hasty journey. He bustled about, barking orders to his men to secure the scene, but Poirot's attention was elsewhere, fixed on the oval mirror above the body. Its surface was unblemished, yet it seemed to mock him with its silence, as if it held secrets it refused to yield. Captain Hastings returned, breathless, his eyes wide with the gravity of the situation. "Poirot, the inspector's a decent chap, but he's out of his depth. Says it's likely a burglary gone wrong. A burglary? In a house like this?" Poirot's moustache twitched with disdain. "A burglary, Hastings? Non, non. This is no thief's work. The letter opener, the shattered mirror in the foyer, these are deliberate acts, symbols of a deeper motive. Mademoiselle Thorne was no random victim. She was chosen. The guests had been gathered in the drawing-room under Mr. Harrow's watchful eye, their faces a tapestry of fear, suspicion, and barely concealed hostility. Lady Eleanor, pale but composed, had insisted on remaining in the manor despite the inspector's suggestion to relocate. "This is my home," she had said, her voice firm. "I will not be driven out by tragedy." Poirot noted the steel in her tone, a reminder that she was no mere socialite, but a woman of resolve. Inspector Caldwell joined Poirot in the sitting-room, mopping his brow. "Monsieur Poirot, I've heard of your reputation. If you've any theories, I'd be glad to hear them. This is a nasty business." Poirot inclined his head. "Theories, Inspector, require facts, and facts require observation. I observe that Mademoiselle Thorne was stabbed with a letter-opener bearing the Ashbourne crest. I observe that the mirror in the foyer was shattered with precision. And I observe that this house, with its many mirrors, is a stage for secrets. Tell me, what did Mademoiselle Thorne do here, beyond her duties as a secretary?" Caldwell frowned. "Lady Eleanor says she was a trusted confidant, handled correspondence, managed the household accounts, quiet sort, kept to herself." "Too quiet, perhaps," Poirot murmured. He stepped closer to the desk, where scattered papers lay in disarray. Among them was a torn envelope, its contents missing. The handwriting on it was elegant, feminine, Lady Eleanor's, perhaps. "This desk was searched, Inspector, not by a burglar, but by someone who knew what they sought." Leaving the inspector to his work, Poirot returned to the drawing-room, where the guests sat in uneasy silence. Sir Reginald Vance gripped a brandy-glass, his knuckles white. Miss Clara Duval smoked furiously, her eyes darting to the door. Dr. Leonard Grayson scribbled notes in a small book, his nervous tic more pronounced. Lord Percival Ashbourne slouched in an armchair, his face haggard, while Julian Carver stared at a mirror on the wall, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Beatrice Langley clutched her pearls, her chatter replaced by a nervous hum. Lady Eleanor stood by the fireplace, her hands clasped tightly. Poirot cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "Mesdames et messieurs, a terrible crime has been committed. Mademoiselle Thorne is dead, and the truth of her death lies among us. I ask you now, what did you know of her? What secrets did she carry?" A ripple of unease passed through the room. Sir Reginald snorted. "She was a nobody, a secretary. Why would anyone kill her?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his voice soft but piercing, "because she was not a nobody. Perhaps because she saw too much, or knew too much." Miss Duval exhaled a plume of smoke. "You're fishing, Monsieur Poirot. Emily was dull as dishwater. If she had secrets, she hid them well." "Too well," Dr. Grayson interjected, his voice measured. "In my professional opinion, repression often masks deeper turmoil. Miss Thorne was reserved, but that doesn't mean she was without motive or enemies." Lord Percival laughed bitterly. "Enemies? That mouse! You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. This is some madman's doing, mark my words." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A madman, monsieur, or a mind that is all too rational, hiding behind chaos? I am interested in the past, your pasts, for it is in the reflections of what has been that we find the truth of what is." Lady Eleanor stepped forward, her voice low. "Monsieur Poirot, Emily came to me 2 years ago, recommended by a friend. She was efficient, loyal, but recently she seemed troubled. She spoke of strange dreams, of seeing things in the mirrors." Poirot's interest sharpened. "Things, madame? What things?" "She wouldn't say," Lady Eleanor replied, her eyes flickering to the mirror behind Poirot. only that she felt watched, as if the mirrors were alive. A chill ran through the room, and Mrs. Langley let out a nervous giggle. "Oh, come now, that's nonsense. Mirrors don't watch people." "Do they not, madame?" Poirot said, his tone enigmatic. "A mirror shows what we wish to see, or what we fear to see. Mademoiselle Thorne saw something, and it cost her her life." He turned to Julian Carver, who had remained silent, his gaze still fixed on the mirror. "Monsieur Carver, you are an artist. You study reflections, no? Did you notice anything unusual about Mademoiselle Thorne, or about the mirrors of this manor?" Julian's eyes flicked to Poirot, wary. "Mirrors are just glass," he said curtly. "They reflect what's there, nothing more." "And yet," Poirot pressed, "the great mirror in the foyer is no more. Shattered, like the life of Mademoiselle Thorne. A coincidence, perhaps?" Julian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Poirot noted the reaction, filing it away with the other fragments of the puzzle. As the evening wore on, Inspector Caldwell took statements, but the guests were guarded, their answers vague. Poirot, however, was not deterred. He excused himself to examine Miss Thorne's room, a modest chamber in the servants' quarters. The room was sparse, with a single mirror above a washstand. Among her belongings, Poirot found a locked diary, its leather cover worn but intact. The lock was simple, and with a hairpin borrowed from Hastings, Poirot opened it. The entries were brief, written in a precise hand. Most detailed mundane tasks, but one passage caught his eye, dated a week prior. "The mirrors show more than they should. I saw her face again, not mine. She knows I know. I fear what comes next." The word "her" was underlined twice, and Poirot's pulse quickened. Who was this her? Lady Eleanor, Miss Duval, Mrs. Langley? He closed the diary, his mind racing. The past was indeed casting long shadows, and Miss Thorne had been caught in their web. As he returned to the drawing-room, he overheard a hushed argument between Sir Reginald and Lord Percival, something about a debt unpaid. Miss Duval, meanwhile, whispered to Julian, her hand on his arm. But he pulled away, his face clouded. Poirot rejoined Hastings, who was looking increasingly anxious. "This place gives me the creeps, Poirot. All these mirrors, it's like being watched from every angle." "Precisely, mon ami," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "And that is why we must look closer. The truth is here, reflected in the past, waiting for Hercule Poirot to bring it to light." As the clock struck midnight, the manor seemed to hold its breath, its mirrors gleaming in the darkness. The puzzle was growing clearer, but the danger was far from over. Chapter 5. Suspects in the Hall of Mirrors. The morning after Miss Emily Thorne's murder dawned grey and oppressive, the sky over Mirrorwood Manor heavy with the threat of rain. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand foyer, where the shattered remains of the great mirror had been swept into a neat pile by the butler, Mr. Harrow. The empty gilt frame gaped like a wound, and Poirot's sharp eyes traced its edges, his mind turning over the events of the previous night. The murder, the scream, the cryptic diary entry, all were pieces of a puzzle, and he was determined to assemble them. Captain Hastings joined him, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Ghastly business, Poirot. Couldn't sleep a wink with all these mirrors staring at me. Any progress?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Progress, Hastings, is made by the little grey cells, not by sleep. I have observed, I have listened, and now I must probe. The truth lies with the guests, and today we shall see them reflected clearly." Inspector Caldwell had stationed a constable at the manor's entrance, ensuring no one could leave, but his investigation was plodding, focused on fingerprints and alibis. Poirot, however, knew that the key to the mystery lay not in physical evidence alone, but in the minds and motives of those present. He requested Lady Eleanor's permission to use the Hall of Mirrors, a long gallery lined with floor-to-ceiling mirrors, for private interviews. "It is fitting," he told her, "to question suspects where their reflections cannot hide." The Hall of Mirrors was a breathtaking space, its walls covered in polished glass that multiplied every movement into infinity. The effect was disorienting, even for Poirot, but he positioned himself at a small table at the gallery's centre, his notebook open and his demeanour calm yet commanding. Hastings sat nearby, ready to take notes, though his attention wandered to the dizzying reflections. First to be questioned was Sir Reginald Vance. The industrialist strode in, his heavy footsteps echoing, his face set in a scowl. "This is absurd, Poirot," he growled, sitting heavily. "I'm a man of business, not a murderer. Why waste my time?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Monsieur, time is never wasted when truth is sought. You knew Mademoiselle Thorne, oui? What was your opinion of her?" Sir Reginald shrugged. "Barely. Noticed her. Mousy little thing, always scurrying about with papers. If she got herself killed, it's nothing to do with me." "And yet," Poirot said, leaning forward, "I observed you arguing with Lord Percival last night about a debt. Did Mademoiselle Thorne know of this debt? Did she perhaps hold papers that concerned you?" Sir Reginald's face reddened. "Nonsense! My dealings with Percival are private. And I was in my room when that mirror broke and the scream happened. Ask Harrow. He saw me retire." Poirot made a note, his expression unreadable. "Merci, Sir Reginald. For now you may go. But the mirrors, they see all, do they not?" Next came Miss Clara Duval, the actress, her crimson lips curved in a defiant smile. She draped herself across the chair, her reflection a cascade of elegance in the mirrors. "Monsieur Poirot, you're wasting your talents on this dreary affair. Emily was nobody. Why fuss over her?" Poirot's voice was soft but piercing. "Mademoiselle, nobody is nobody when they are murdered. Did you speak with her often? Did she confide in you, perhaps, about her fears?" Clara laughed, a sharp theatrical sound. "Confide? In me? She was too dull for that. Though," she hesitated, her eyes flickering to her reflection. "She did ask me once about my time in Paris years ago. Strange, for a secretary to care about such things." Poirot's interest sharpened. "Paris? And what did you tell her?" "Nothing," Clara said quickly. "Buried in the mirrors, their reflections multiplying into a kaleidoscope of unease." She knew nothing, Monsieur Poirot. But she was afraid, always looking over her shoulder, as if someone, or something, was watching her. Poirot nodded, dismissing her but noting the connection to Paris. A city tied to several guests' pasts, he suspected. Dr. Leonard Grayson followed, his nervous tic more pronounced in the mirrored hall. "I study the mind, Monsieur Poirot," he said, "not mirrors. But I'll tell you, Emily's behaviour suggested paranoia. She spoke of seeing things, faces, in the mirrors." "Whose face, Doctor?" Poirot asked, his voice calm but insistent. Grayson shrugged. "She wouldn't say, but she was anxious, secretive. I suspect she uncovered something dangerous, perhaps about one of us." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you, Doctor, what secrets do you hide? Your questions last night were probing." Grayson's tic worsened. "Merely professional curiosity. I was in my study, writing at the time of the murder. I saw nothing." Lord Percival Ashburn was next, his dishevelled appearance and bloodshot eyes betraying a sleepless night. "I barely knew the girl," he slurred. "She handled Eleanor's letters, that's all. If she was snooping, she brought this on herself." Poirot's tone was sharp. "Snooping, monsieur? Into what? Your debts to Sir Reginald, perhaps? Or something more personal?" Percival's eyes flashed with anger. "Mind your own business, Poirot. I was in the library drinking when it happened. Ask anyone." Julian Carver entered next, his dark curls falling over his brow, his expression guarded. "Mirrors are my trade," he said, his voice low. "I paint what I see in them. But Emily, she saw things that weren't there, or so she said." "And you, Monsieur Carver?" Poirot pressed. "What do you see in these mirrors? You were watching them last night, no?" Julian's jaw tightened. "Just glass. I was in my room, sketching, when the scream came, that's all." Mrs. Beatrice Langley followed, her pearls clicking nervously. "Emily was sweet, quiet," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't imagine who'd hurt her. I was in the conservatory reading when it happened." Poirot noted her unease, the way her eyes avoided the mirrors. "Madame, did Mademoiselle Thorne ever speak of a woman from the past? Someone who troubled her?" Mrs. Langley paled. No, she didn't. Why do you ask?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Merely a reflection, madame. The truth will come." Finally, Lady Eleanor entered, her composure strained but intact. "Emily was my friend," she said softly. "She knew things, private things, about my family, my guests. I trusted her." "Trusted, perhaps," Poirot said, "but did she betray that trust? Her diary speaks of a woman, of fear. Who was she, madame?" Lady Eleanor's lips parted, then closed. "I don't know," she said at last. "But the mirrors, Emily said they showed her things. I thought she was imagining it, but now—" Poirot dismissed her, his mind racing. Each guest had an alibi, each a secret, and the mirrors seemed to tie them all together. As he left the Hall of Mirrors, he paused before one, studying his own reflection. The diary's words echoed. "I saw her face again, not mine. Whose face? And why had the great mirror been shattered?" Outside, the rain began to fall, mirroring the turmoil within. Poirot knew the past was key, its reflections haunting the present. The suspects were hiding truths, and he would uncover them, one by one, in this house of glass and shadows. Chapter 6. The Phantom Reflection. The rain battered Mirrorwood Manor, its relentless drumming a counterpoint to the unease that had settled over the household. Hercule Poirot stood alone in the Hall of Mirrors, the long gallery where he had questioned the suspects earlier that day. The mirrors gleamed in the dim light of a single chandelier, their surfaces casting endless reflections that seemed to pulse with secrets. Poirot's small, immaculate figure was multiplied infinitely, each image a silent observer to his thoughts. The murder of Miss Emily Thorne, the shattered mirror in the foyer, and the cryptic diary entry all pointed to a truth hidden in the interplay of light and shadow, and Poirot was determined to uncover it. Captain Hastings found him there, his face etched with worry. "Poirot, you've been at it for hours. Any closer to cracking this thing? The inspector's men are poking around, but they're getting nowhere." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Patience, mon ami. The little grey cells, they work in their own time. The mirrors of this manor, they are not mere decoration. They are witnesses, perhaps even accomplices, to the crime." Hastings shivered, glancing at the mirrored walls. "You're giving me the creeps, Poirot. Mirrors as accomplices? Next, you'll say they're haunted." "Not haunted, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low, "but they reflect more than we see. Mademoiselle Thorne wrote of seeing a woman's face, not her own. I begin to suspect that face belongs to someone from the past. a past that binds these guests together. Poirot had spent the morning examining Miss Thorne's diary further, finding only fragmented clues, references to her, and the truth in the glass. One entry, dated 3 days prior, read, "The mirror in the east wing showed it again. I cannot tell her. She would never forgive me, but I must know." The words gnawed at Poirot, suggesting that Miss Thorne had stumbled upon a secret so dangerous it cost her life. He decided to explore the east wing, where the murder had occurred, hoping to find what Miss Thorne had seen. The corridor was quiet, the mirrors along its walls reflecting the flickering light of wall sconces. Poirot paused before the small oval mirror in the sitting room where Miss Thorne's body had been found. The bloodstains had been cleaned, but the room felt heavy, as if the air itself remembered the violence. He studied the mirror, its surface unmarred, and leaned closer. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker, a shadow that moved independently of his own reflection. He blinked, and it was gone. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his heart quickening. "Is it possible? A trick of the light, or something more?" He summoned Mr. Harrow, the butler, whose gaunt face and guarded eyes suggested he knew more than he let on. "Monsieur Harrow," Poirot said, "these mirrors, are they all original to the manor?" Harrow hesitated. "Most are, sir. The Ashbourne family has always been fond of them. Some say the mirrors were crafted by a Venetian master, enchanted to show truths others miss." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Enchanted? A fanciful notion. But tell me, did Mademoiselle Thorne ever speak of the mirrors, or of seeing something unusual in them?" Harrow's expression tightened. "She was fanciful, sir. Said she saw things, faces, shadows. I told her it was nerves. This old house plays tricks on the mind." Poirot dismissed him, unconvinced. The butler's unease was palpable, and Poirot suspected he was hiding something. He returned to the drawing-room, where the guests were gathered, their nerves frayed by the ongoing investigation. Inspector Caldwell had questioned them again, but their alibis held the two men, each claiming to have been alone at the time of the murder. Poirot, however, trusted alibis as much as he trusted a fox in a henhouse. Lady Eleanor stood by the fireplace, her face pale but resolute. "Monsieur Poirot, have you found anything? The inspector seems to think it was a random act, but I cannot believe it." "Nor I, madame," Poirot replied. "This was no random act. Mademoiselle Thorne saw something in the mirrors, something that threatened someone here. Tell me, what do you know of a woman from the past, one who might haunt these reflections?" Lady Eleanor's eyes widened, and she glanced at the mirror above the mantel. "A woman? I don't know what you mean. Emily was superstitious, always talking of ghosts and shadows." Poirot noted her hesitation but pressed no further. Instead he turned to the group, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, I propose a small experiment. Let us gather in the Hall of Mirrors tonight, after dinner. There we shall see what the mirrors reveal." The suggestion was met with unease. Sir Reginald Vance snorted. "A parlour game, Poirot. We've a murder to solve, not time for nonsense." Miss Clara Duval laughed, but it was brittle. "What's next? A séance? You're wasting our time." Dr. Leonard Grayson, however, leaned forward, his tic pronounced. "An intriguing idea. The mind can project its fears onto reflective surfaces. Perhaps Miss Thorne's paranoia will reveal itself." Julian Carver said nothing, his eyes fixed on a mirror, while Lord Percival muttered about needing a drink. Mrs. Beatrice Langley clutched her pearls, her voice trembling. "I don't like it. This house feels wrong." Dinner was a tense affair, The guests' conversations stilted. Poirot observed their interactions. Clara's flirtations with Julian, now tinged with desperation. Sir Reginald's barbed remarks to Percival. Grayson's probing questions, deflected by all. Lady Eleanor was subdued, her gaze often straying to the mirrors, as if expecting to see something or someone. After dinner, they gathered in the Hall of Mirrors, the chandelier casting a ghostly glow. Poirot stood at the centre, his reflection a legion of detectives staring back. "Mes amis," he said, "mirrors show us ourselves, but also our fears, our secrets." Mademoiselle Thorne saw a woman's face, one that terrified her. "Let us look now, together, and see what we find." He dimmed the chandelier, leaving only a few candles to illuminate the hall. The mirrors seemed to come alive, their surfaces shimmering with shadows. The guests stood in a semicircle, their reflections distorted by the flickering light. Poirot watched their faces, searching for a telltale sign. A flinch, a glance, a betrayal. Mrs. Langley gasped suddenly, pointing at a mirror. "There! Did you see it? A face, not mine!" The others turned, but the mirror showed only their own reflections. Poirot moved swiftly to her, sighed. "What did you see, madame?" "A woman," she whispered, her voice shaking, pale, with dark eyes. "She was watching me." Poirot's pulse quickened. "Describe her, madame." Every detail Mrs. Langley faltered. "It was fleeting. Her hair was dark, her expression sad. I don't know her." The others murmured denials, but Poirot noted Julian's clenched fists and Clara's sudden pallor. He raised the chandelier's light, breaking the spell. "Enough for tonight," he said, "but the mirrors have spoken, and Hercule Poirot listens." As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes on the mirror where Mrs. Langley had seen the face. The phantom reflection, he knew, was no ghost but a clue, a link to the past that tied the murder to the manor's secrets. The woman in the mirror was the key, and Poirot would find her, no matter how deeply her reflection was buried. Chapter 7. Unravelling Alibis. The rain had ceased, leaving Mirrorwood Manor cloaked in a damp, oppressive stillness. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, the morning light filtering through heavy curtains and glinting off the ever-present mirrors. The murder of Miss Emily Thorne hung over the household like a storm cloud, and the phantom reflection seen by Mrs. Beatrice Langley the previous night had only deepened the unease. Poirot's little grey cells were alight, piecing together the fragments of clues. The shattered mirror, the cryptic diary, the mysterious woman's face. Today he resolved to unravel the alibis of the suspects, for he knew that truth often hid behind the flimsiest of lies. Captain Hastings joined him, nursing a cup of tea, his face drawn from a restless night. "Poirot, this place is getting under my skin. That business in the Hall of Mirrors last night, Mrs. Langley's face when she saw that thing. Do you think there's something supernatural here?" Poirot's eyes twinkled with amusement, though his expression remained grave. "Supernatural, Hastings? Non, non. The only spirits at work are those of deception and fear. The face Madame Langley saw is a clue, not a ghost. It points to a truth buried in the past, and today we shall dig for it." Inspector Caldwell had set up a makeshift office in the library, where he pored over statements with a furrowed brow. Poirot found him there, surrounded by papers and a half-empty teapot. "Monsieur Poirot," Caldwell said, looking up, "I've checked the alibis again. They're solid, too solid, if you ask me. Everyone claims to have been alone when the mirror broke and the scream was heard. No witnesses to confirm or contradict." Poirot nodded, his fingers stroking his moustache. Precisely, Inspector. Alibis without corroboration are like reflections without a source. They tell us nothing and everything. Let us test them, we. He began with Sir Reginald Vance, summoning him to the library. The industrialist entered, his broad frame filling the doorway, his scowl deeper than ever. "This is harassment, Poirot," he growled, sitting heavily. "I told you. I was in my room, reading. Harrow saw me go up." Poirot's voice was smooth, almost soothing. "Indeed, monsieur, but the timing, it is curious. The mirror shattered at approximately 9 o'clock, and the scream followed moments later. Your room is in the west wing, far from the east wing, where Mademoiselle Thorne was found. Yet you heard nothing?" Sir Reginald's eyes narrowed. "It's a big house. I was focused on my book." "And what book was it, monsieur?" Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Sir Reginald hesitated, then muttered, "Some financial journal." "Don't recall the title." Poirot made a note, his expression unreadable. "Merci, you may go." Next was Miss Clara Duval, who sauntered in with a cigarette in hand, her crimson lipstick a stark contrast to her pale face. "Monsieur Poirot, this is tedious," she said, exhaling smoke. "I was in my room, practicing lines, alone. Surely you don't suspect me?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Mademoiselle, I suspect everyone until the truth is revealed. You mentioned Mademoiselle Thorne asked about your time in Paris. Did she perhaps know of a woman from that time? A woman whose face might linger in a mirror?" Clara's hand trembled slightly, but she laughed it off. "Paris was years ago. I barely remember it myself. Emily was curious, that's all. I was in my room when it happened, ask anyone. But no one saw you, mademoiselle," Poirot said softly. "A solitary alibi is no alibi at all." Dr. Leonard Grayson followed, his nervous tic more pronounced under Poirot's scrutiny. "I was in my study, writing notes on the guest's behaviour," he said, his voice clipped. "Psychological observations, you understand. I heard the crash, but thought it was a servant dropping something." Poirot leaned forward. "And the scream, doctor? Did it not alarm you?" Grayson's tic twitched. "I assumed it was hysteria. This house is full of it." "And your notes?" Poirot pressed. "Did they include Mademoiselle Thorne? Did she speak of a woman, or of the mirrors?" Grayson hesitated. "She mentioned feeling watched, but I dismissed it as paranoia. My notes are private, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot dismissed him, noting the evasion. Lord Percival Ashbourne was next, his dishevelled state suggesting another night of heavy drinking. "I was in the library drowning my sorrows," he said with a bitter laugh. "Didn't hear a thing until the commotion started." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "And your debts to Sir Reginald, monsieur? Did Mademoiselle Thorne know of them? Did she perhaps hold papers that threatened you?" Percival's face darkened. "Leave it, Poirot. My debts are my own. I didn't kill her." Julian Carver entered, his dark eyes wary. "I was sketching in my room," he said curtly. "The mirrors here inspire me. But I didn't see or hear anything until the scream." Poirot tilted his head. "You are an artist, monsieur. You see what others miss. Did Mademoiselle Thorne ever speak of a woman in the mirrors?" Julian's jaw tightened. "She was nervous, always glancing at them. Said she saw someone once, but I thought it was her imagination." Mrs. Beatrice Langley was last, her pearls clicking as she fidgeted. "I was in the conservatory reading," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw that face last night, Monsieur Poirot. It wasn't my imagination, it was her." Poirot's interest sharpened. "Her, madame? Who?" Mrs. Langley's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know her name, but her face, it was familiar, like someone I'd seen long ago. I can't place it." Poirot dismissed her, his mind racing. Each alibi was flimsy, unsupported by witnesses, and the mention of a woman's face kept resurfacing. He returned to Miss Thorne's diary, rereading the passage, "I saw her face again, not mine. She knows I know." The key, he suspected, lay in the past, a shared history among the guests. He sought out Lady Eleanor, finding her in her private study, a small room lined with books and, inevitably, a mirror. "Madame," he said, "the alibis of your guests are like smoke. They vanish under scrutiny. Tell me of the past. Who is the woman Mademoiselle Thorne saw?" Lady Eleanor's hands trembled. "I don't know, Monsieur Poirot. But Emily was digging into old family records, letters, journals. She said she found something about a woman connected to us all, someone who disappeared." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Disappeared, madame? When and why?" "Years ago," Lady Eleanor said, her voice barely audible. "Before I inherited the manor, there was a scandal, hushed up. Emily wouldn't tell me more, but she was frightened." Poirot nodded, the puzzle taking shape. The woman in the mirror was a ghost from the past, her reflection a threat to someone present. As he left the study, he passed a mirror and paused, studying his own image. For a fleeting moment, he thought he saw another face, a woman's, pale and sorrowful, behind his own. He blinked and it was gone. But Poirot knew the truth was close, hidden in the alibis and the shadows of Mirrorwood Manor. He would unravel them, one by one, until the killer's reflection was laid bare. Chapter 8. Hidden Facets and Forbidden Secrets. The afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Mirrorwood Manor, casting a muted glow across the drawing room where Hercule Poirot stood, his hands clasped behind his back. The air was thick with tension, the guests' nerves frayed by the ongoing investigation into Miss Emily Thorne's murder. The shattered mirror in the foyer, the cryptic diary entries, and the phantom reflection seen by Mrs. Beatrice Langley had woven a web of intrigue that Poirot was determined to untangle. His little grey cells buzzed with the certainty that the truth lay not in the present, but in the hidden facets of the past, secrets buried deep, reflected only in the manor's many mirrors. Captain Hastings paced nearby, his brow furrowed. "Poirot, this case is a tangle. Everyone's got an alibi, but they're all flimsy as tissue paper. And that face Mrs. Langley saw, it's got me spooked. Are we chasing ghosts or murderers?" Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. "Ghosts, Hastings? Non, non. The only ghosts here are those of memory, and they are far more dangerous than specters. The woman in the mirror is no phantom, but a clue, a forbidden secret that Mademoiselle Thorne uncovered, and for which she paid with her life." Inspector Caldwell had retreated to the library, grumbling about the lack of physical evidence, but Poirot had little faith in fingerprints or footprints. The key, he believed, lay in the connections between the guests, connections rooted in a shared history that Lady Eleanor had hinted at, a scandal long buried. He decided to search the manor's archives, hoping to find the records Miss Thorne had been studying. With Lady Eleanor's permission, Poirot and Hastings ventured into the manor's west wing, where a dusty room housed the Ashbourne family archives. The air was stale, the shelves lined with leather-bound journals and boxes of yellowed letters. A single tarnished mirror hung on the wall, its surface clouded with age. Poirot's eyes lingered on it, sensing its significance, but he turned his attention to the documents. "Hastings, we seek a woman," he said, sifting through a box of letters. "A woman from the past, known to these guests whose disappearance caused a scandal. Mademoiselle Thorne found her name, and it led to her death." Hastings, flipping through a journal, shook his head. "Needle in a haystack, Poirot. These records go back decades. Any luck?" Poirot's fingers paused on a letter dated 15 years prior, its handwriting elegant but hurried. It was addressed to Lady Eleanor's late father, Lord Henry Ashbourne, and signed by a woman named Margaret Vale. The contents were cryptic. "You cannot keep her hidden forever. The truth will come out, and it will destroy you all." Poirot's pulse quickened. "Margaret Vale," he murmured, "a name at last." He showed the letter to Hastings, who frowned. "Who's Margaret Vale? And who's the her she's talking about?" "A question for our hostess," Poirot said, tucking the letter into his pocket. "But first, let us see what else the archives reveal." They spent an hour combing through journals, finding references to a young woman named Lillian Gray, a governess who had worked at Mirrorwood Manor years ago. She had vanished abruptly, with whispers of a scandal involving several of the current guests, then young visitors to the estate. The records were vague, but one entry in Lord Henry's journal stood out. "Lillian's disappearance has broken Margaret. She blames us all. Reginald, Clara, Percival, even Beatrice. The mirrors will not let us forget." Poirot closed the journal, his mind racing. "Lillian Gray," he said softly. "The woman in the mirror, perhaps. And Margaret Vale, her champion. We must speak to Lady Eleanor." They found her in her study, her face pale as she sorted through papers. "Madame," Poirot said, producing the letter, "who is Margaret Vale, and what is her connection to Lillian Gray?" Lady Eleanor's hands froze, her eyes wide with shock. "Where did you find that?" "The archives," Poirot replied. "Mademoiselle Thorne was studying them, was she not? She found something about Lillian Gray, a woman who disappeared, leaving a scandal in her wake." Lady Eleanor sank into a chair, her composure fraying. "Lillian was our governess when I was a child. She was kind, beautiful. Then she vanished, and there were rumours, affairs, betrayals. Margaret Vale was her friend, a local woman who accused my father and his guests of wrongdoing. She left soon after, swearing vengeance." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And the guests? Sir Reginald, Miss Duval, Lord Percival, Mrs. Langley? They were here then?" Lady Eleanor nodded. "Yes, along with others. It was a different time, but the scandal lingered. Emily must have found something in the archives, something dangerous." Poirot thanked her and left, his mind piecing together the puzzle. Lillian Gray's disappearance was the key, and Margaret Vale's letter suggested a cover-up. Had Miss Thorne uncovered evidence that threatened to expose it? He decided to confront the guests, starting with Sir Reginald. He found the industrialist in the billiard-room, his face flushed from brandy. "Monsieur Vance," Poirot said, "tell me of Lillian Gray. What happened to her 15 years ago?" Sir Reginald's glass trembled. "Lillian! Ancient history. She was a governess, got herself into trouble, and left, that's all." "Trouble, monsieur?" Poirot pressed. "With whom? You, Lord Percival? Someone else?" Sir Reginald's eyes flashed. "What's your accusations, Poirot? I had nothing to do with her. Ask Percival. He was the one mooning over her." Poirot moved on to Miss Clara Duval, who was in the conservatory, her cigarette smoke curling in the air. "Mademoiselle," he said, "Lillian Gray. You knew her in Paris, perhaps, before she came here." Clara's smile faltered. "Paris? I don't know what you mean. Lillian was a flirt, got in over her head, that's all I know." One by one, Poirot questioned the others. Lord Percival admitted to a youthful infatuation with Lillian, but denied any wrongdoing. Mrs. Langley claimed ignorance, though her trembling hands betrayed her. Dr. Grayson, who had not been present at the time, seemed overly curious about the scandal, while Julian Carver, too young to have known Lillian, was evasive about his own past. As evening fell, Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing-room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice commanding, "the past is a mirror that reflects your secrets. Lillian Gray disappeared, and Margaret Vale accused you. Mademoiselle Thorne found evidence of this, and it cost her life. Who among you feared her discovery?" The room erupted in denials, but Poirot's eyes were drawn to a mirror behind Lady Eleanor. For a moment he thought he saw a face, pale, dark-eyed, sorrowful, watching them. He blinked and it was gone, but the chill remained. "The truth is close," Poirot said, his voice soft but resolute. "The mirrors of Mirrorwood Manor hold your secrets, and Hercule Poirot will shatter them." As the guests dispersed, their faces pale, Poirot knew he was nearing the heart of the mystery. The hidden facets of the past were coming into focus, and the forbidden secrets would soon be laid bare. Chapter 9. The Stormy Night Revelation. The storm that had threatened Mirrorwood Manor all day broke with a vengeance as night fell, thunder rolling like a warning across the Sussex hills. Lightning flashed, illuminating the manor's many mirrors and casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, his small frame silhouetted against a window, his mind a whirlwind of deductions. The murder of Miss Emily Thorne, the shattered mirror, the cryptic diary, and the phantom face of Lillian Gray were converging toward a truth that Poirot could almost grasp. Tonight, he resolved, the storm would bring more than rain. It would bring revelation. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood by the fireplace, his face etched with unease. "Poirot, this place feels like it's closing in. That name, Lillian Gray, it's rattled everyone. Do you think she's the key to all this?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the firelight. "Oui, Hastings. Lillian Gray is the mirror in which this crime is reflected. Her disappearance, the scandal, the secrets, they are the heart of this mystery. Mademoiselle Thorne uncovered something about her, and someone in this house killed to keep it buried." The guests were gathered in the drawing-room, their faces pale under the flickering light. Lady Eleanor sat rigidly, her hands clasped, while Sir Reginald Vance gripped a brandy-glass, his scowl deeper than ever. Miss Clara Duval smoked nervously, her crimson lips trembling. Dr. Leonard Grayson's tic was relentless, his notebook abandoned. Lord Percival Ashbourne slouched, his eyes bloodshot, and Julian Carver stared at a mirror, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Beatrice Langley's pearls clicked as she fidgeted, her earlier chatter replaced by a tense silence. Poirot had spent the day piecing together the fragments of Lillian Gray's story. The archives had revealed her as a governess who vanished 15 years ago, leaving behind whispers of affairs and betrayal. Margaret Vale's letter accused the guests of wrongdoing, and Miss Thorne's diary suggested she had found evidence, perhaps a letter or journal, that threatened to expose it. The phantom face in the mirrors, seen by Mrs. Langley and hinted at by Emily, pointed to Lillian's lingering presence, not as a ghost, but as a memory that haunted the guilty. Thunder rumbled as Poirot addressed the group, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, the storm outside mirrors the turmoil within this house. Lillian Gray's disappearance is no longer a mystery of the past. It is the key to Mademoiselle Thorne's murder. Someone here feared what she discovered. I ask you now, what do you know of Lillian's fate?" Sir Reginald slammed his glass down. "This is nonsense, Poirot. Lillian was a nobody who ran off. Why drag up old gossip?" Clara Duval exhaled a plume of smoke. "She's right, monsieur. Lillian was trouble. She played with fire, lovers, secrets, and got burned. Let it go. Poirot's gaze was piercing. "And you, Mademoiselle Duval? Did you know her in Paris, perhaps, before she came to Mirrorwood?" Clara's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. "Paris? I told you, that was years ago. I barely remember her." Lord Percival laughed bitterly. "Lillian was a flirt. Broke my heart, if you must know. But I didn't kill her, and I didn't kill Emily." Mrs. Langley's voice trembled. "I saw her face, Monsieur Poirot. In the mirror. It was Lillian, I'm sure of it. But how?" "She's gone," Dr. Grayson interjected, his tic twitching. "Psychologically, such visions are projections of guilt or fear. Perhaps Miss Thorne's obsession with Lillian infected us all." Julian Carver remained silent, his eyes fixed on a mirror, and Poirot noted his tension. "Monsieur Carver," he said, "you are young, yet you seem to know this house. Did you know of Lillian Gray?" Julian's jaw tightened. "I've heard the stories. My father was a friend of the Ashbournes. He mentioned her. A tragedy, he called it." Lady Eleanor spoke at last, her voice strained. "Monsieur Poirot, Lillian's disappearance broke my family. My father never spoke of it, but Emily, she found something in the archives. A letter, she said, that changed everything." Poirot's pulse quickened. "A letter, madame? Where is it now?" Lady Eleanor shook her head. "She wouldn't show me. She said it was too dangerous." Lightning flashed, illuminating the room, and for a moment Poirot thought he saw a shadow in the mirror behind Lady Eleanor. A woman's face, pale and sorrowful. He blinked, and it was gone, but the sight spurred him to action. "Mes amis," he said, "we shall search for this letter. It is the key to the truth." He led the group to the archives, the storm's roar muffled by the manor's thick walls. The dusty room was as they had left it, the tarnished mirror on the wall reflecting their anxious faces. Poirot directed Hastings and the guests to search the boxes, his eyes scanning for anything out of place. As they worked, he noticed Julian Carver lingering near a shelf, his hands trembling as he handled a journal. "Monsieur Carver," Poirot said sharply, "what do you hide?" Julian flinched, dropping the journal. A folded paper slipped out, its edges yellowed. Poirot pounced, unfolding it to reveal a letter in Margaret Vale's handwriting, dated a month after Lillian's disappearance. It read, "You thought you could bury Lillian, but I know the truth. She was with child, and you all played a part in her ruin. The mirrors will show it, and I will see justice done." Poirot's voice was soft but resonant as he read aloud. The guests froze, their faces a gallery of shock and fear. Lady Eleanor gasped. "With child? My father never said—" Sir Reginald's voice was hoarse. "It's a lie. Margaret was mad, always stirring trouble." Clara's cigarette fell to the floor. "She was pregnant. That's impossible." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Impossible, mademoiselle, or inconvenient. This letter was what Mademoiselle Thorne found, and it cost her life. Who among you feared its revelation?" Lord Percival swayed, his face ashen. "I didn't know. I swear it." Mrs. Langley sobbed. Her pearls clutched tightly. "Lillian was kind to me. I never thought—" Dr. Grayson's tic was relentless. "This explains her paranoia. The guilt of the past, reflected in the mirrors." Julian's voice was barely audible. "My father, he told me Lillian's death was no accident, but I didn't believe him." Poirot's mind raced. Lillian Gray, pregnant, had been a threat to someone, perhaps multiple people, in this room. Her disappearance, likely a murder, had been covered up, and Emily Thorne's discovery of the letter had reignited the danger. The mirrors, with their endless reflections, seemed to taunt the guilty, their secrets no longer hidden. As thunder crashed, Poirot turned to the group, The letter is the key, but the killer is among you. The mirrors have shown us Lillian's face, and now they will show us the truth. Tomorrow, I shall reveal the murderer." The guests dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the storm's lull. Poirot lingered, staring into the tarnished mirror. The woman's face did not appear, but he felt her presence, a silent witness to the secrets of Mirrorwood Manor. The revelation was at hand, and Hercule Poirot would ensure that justice, like lightning, would strike true. Chapter 10. Poirot's shattering truth. The storm had passed, leaving Mirrorwood Manor bathed in the pale light of a new dawn. The air was crisp, the ground sodden, but within the manor's walls a different kind of storm was about to break. Hercule Poirot had summoned the guests to the Hall of Mirrors, the long gallery where reflections multiplied and secrets seemed to linger in the glass. The murder of Miss Emily Thorne, the shattered mirror in the foyer, the cryptic diary, and the haunting presence of Lillian Gray's memory had led to this moment. Poirot stood at the centre of the hall, his small frame commanding, his moustache immaculate, his green eyes gleaming with the certainty of truth. Captain Hastings stood by his side, his face a mix of anticipation and unease. "Poirot, you've got that look," he whispered. "You've solved it, haven't you? Who did it?" Poirot's lips curved faintly. "Patience, mon ami. The little grey cells have worked tirelessly, and now they shall reveal all. The mirrors of this manor have shown us the past, and today they will reflect the guilty." The guests filed in, their faces pale and drawn. Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, her composure strained, stood near the entrance, her eyes darting to the mirrors. Sir Reginald Vance glowered, his brandy-glass absent but his fists clenched. Miss Clara Duval, her usual bravado muted, lit a cigarette with trembling hands. Dr. Leonard Grayson's nervous tic was relentless, his notebook clutched like a shield. Lord Percival Ashbourne slouched, his bloodshot eyes betraying a sleepless night. Julian Carver, the painter, stared at the floor, his dark curls hiding his expression. Mrs. Beatrice Langley clutched her pearls, her lips trembling. Inspector Caldwell and his constables stood by the door, ready to act on Poirot's conclusions. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. "Mesdames et messieurs, we are gathered to unmask a murderer. Mademoiselle Emily Thorne was killed because she uncovered a secret buried 15 years ago, reflected in the mirrors of this manor. That secret is the fate of Lillian Gray, a governess who vanished, leaving behind a scandal and a letter that threatened to expose the guilty." He held up Margaret Vale's letter, its words now etched in his mind. Lillian Gray was with child when she disappeared. Her friend Margaret Vale accused those present, Sir Reginald, Miss Duval, Lord Percival, Mrs. Langley, of complicity in her ruin. Mademoiselle Thorne found this letter, and it cost her life. But who among you feared her discovery most? Sir Reginald snorted. "This is preposterous, Poirot. I had nothing to do with Lillian or Emily." Clara exhaled smoke, her voice sharp. "You're chasing shadows, monsieur. Lillian ran off. Emily was just unlucky." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Unlucky, mademoiselle? No. She was murdered with a letter opener bearing the Ashbourne crest, in a room with a mirror that showed her a face. Not her own, but Lillian's. The mirrors of this manor are more than glass. They are witnesses to your secrets." He turned to Lady Eleanor. "Madame, you said Mademoiselle Thorne was your confidant. She found the letter in your archives, oui? But she also found something else, a journal perhaps, or another letter, that named the father of Lillian's child." Lady Eleanor's face paled. I I don't know what she found. She wouldn't tell me." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the group. "Let us reconstruct the night of the murder." The great mirror in the foyer was shattered at 9 o'clock, followed by a scream. Mademoiselle Thorne was found in the east wing, stabbed. Each of you claims to have been alone. Sir Reginald in his room, Miss Duval practising lines, Dr. Grayson writing, Lord Percival drinking, Mrs. Langley reading, Monsieur Carver sketching, but one of you lied. He paced, his reflection a legion of detectives in the mirrors. The key is Lillian Gray. She was loved, betrayed, and silenced. Her pregnancy threatened someone's reputation, someone with power, with secrets. Sir Reginald, your business dealings with Lord Henry Ashbourne were lucrative, but did they come at a cost? Did Lillian know too much? Sir Reginald's face reddened. "I told you, I barely knew her." Poirot turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle Duval, you were in Paris when Lillian was there, before she came to Mirrorwood. Did she know of your past? A scandal, perhaps, that you wished to keep buried?" Clara's cigarette trembled. "You're grasping, Poirot. I had no reason to harm her." Poirot's gaze shifted to Lord Percival. "Monsieur, you admitted to an infatuation with Lillian. Was it more? Did you father her child, and did Emily's discovery threaten your inheritance?" Percival's eyes flashed. "That's slander. I loved her, but I didn't hurt her." Mrs. Langley sobbed. "Lillian was kind to me. I never thought she'd come to harm." Dr. Grayson interjected, his tic pronounced. "Psychologically, this obsession with mirrors suggests collective guilt. Perhaps we all played a part." Poirot's voice was sharp. "Non, doctor, not all. One he." Turned to Julian Carver, who had remained silent, his eyes fixed on a mirror. "Monsieur Carver, you are young, yet you know this house. Your father was a friend of the Ashbournes. Did he tell you of Lillian's fate? Did you kill to protect his legacy?" Julian's head snapped up, his face pale. "My father! He was ashamed. He said Lillian's death was a tragedy, but I didn't kill Emily." Poirot paused, his eyes gleaming. "The truth, mes amis, is in the mirrors. They showed Mademoiselle Thorne Lillian's face, a face that pointed to her killer. The letter opener, the shattered mirror, these were not random acts but symbols of guilt, and the guilty one is," he pointed to Doctor, "Leonard Grayson. You, Doctor, you were not here 15 years ago, yet you know too much. Your questions, your notes, they were not observation but investigation. You came to Mirrorwood to uncover Lillian's fate, did you not? Your father was involved in her ruin, and you sought to protect his name." Grayson's tic stopped, his face a mask of shock. "This is absurd," Poirot continued, relentless. "Mademoiselle Thorne found a letter in the archives, one that named your father as Lillian's lover, and the father of her child. You followed her to the East Wing, saw her reading it, and struck. The mirror in the foyer was shattered to distract, to create chaos. But the mirrors betrayed you, Doctor. They showed Lillian's face, a reflection of your guilt." Grayson's hands shook. "You have no proof." Poirot produced a small folded note from his pocket, found in the archives after the previous night's search. "This is the letter Mademoiselle Thorne found, hidden in a journal. It names your father, Edward Grayson, as Lillian's lover. You killed to keep it secret, to protect your family's honor." Grayson lunged forward, but Inspector Caldwell's constable restrained him. The room erupted in gasps, Lady Eleanor's hand flying to her mouth. "Edward Grayson, my father's friend," she whispered. Poirot's voice was calm. "The mirrors of Mirrorwood Manor have spoken, and Hercule Poirot has listened. Justice is served." As Grayson was led away, the mirrors gleamed, their reflections clear at last. The storm had broken, and the truth, like the dawn, had shattered the darkness.